Jordan Diop was a 16-year-old black young man from Michigan, whose parents of African descent had left everything behind to fulfill the American dream and give a better future to their 4 children: Jordan, Elisa, Alina, and Hassan. As the eldest of 4 siblings, and after the unexpected death of his father a couple of years ago, Jordan was forced to grow up early to help his mother with the household finances and the care of his 3 younger siblings. During the day, he attended his high school classes, and in the afternoons he worked a few hours at an electronics store. He had always been good at computers, and his dream was to become an engineer, so he decided to take advantage of his gifts to start earning some extra money to help out at home. Any other teenager would have complained or felt frustrated at having to sacrifice in such a way, but Jordan never complained or got mad at his mother for having to take on the role of man of the house and take care of everyone when he was still a kid. "It's my duty as a big brother. There is nothing that matters more to me than your welfare, Mom. Don't cry for me. I'm happy every time I bring money home, and you can buy more food for everyone," Jordan told his mother to comfort her, every time the woman burst into tears, seeing how her son spent the day out of the house to help them. But Jordan's kindness was infinite, and many times, without telling his mother, after school he would also stop by to help neighbors in the neighborhood who asked him for favors. Most of the time, they were small favors, simple household chores that they could no longer do because they were too old and could hardly fend for themselves: mowing the lawn, watering the plants, taking the cat to the vet, fixing an old TV set, and so on. Jordan was happy to do it and never asked for anything in return. However, everyone wanted to give him something as a token of gratitude, and the boy always came home with gifts of all kinds: a basket of fruit, a bottle of cologne, chocolate bars, a rose bush, etc. His mother had become accustomed to receiving all kinds of gifts, without her son telling her where he got them from, although she knew deep down where they came from, or at least she imagined it. But she preferred not to burden him, and to thank her son for everything he did for them and the rest of the community in silence. "You are an angel, my son, an angel with a heart of gold. You look more like your father every day. I would be so proud of you," his mother would tell him in tears every time she saw him come in the evenings, exhausted after being out all day, but with a present under his arm and the best of his smiles. However, Jordan's kindness and his desire to always help others would end up getting him into trouble, and what at first seemed to be a courtesy visit to the house of an elderly neighbor whom he was very fond of and helped in everything he asked, would end up becoming a nightmare from which he had no idea how to escape. It all started one afternoon in late spring. Jordan was coming back from working at the electronics store at the end of the street and walked slowly looking at the gardens of the houses that were there until he reached his house. His family was not rich, nor was it close to being so, but his father's work allowed them to live in a good neighborhood and to have a nice house, although it was one of the smallest and humblest of all the houses in the neighborhood. However, Jordan was still fascinated by the beauty of the surrounding gardens and fantasized about being able to buy his family a house this big and beautiful one day. In particular, the young man loved the rose and magnolia garden of Mr. Fisher, an elderly man who had been living alone in his small mansion since his wife died more than 20 years ago. The old man was still in good mental health at almost 90 years old, and was strong enough to live alone and not need anyone to take care of him. But his garden was too large, and was growing pale as the months went by due to lack of care. In the past few months, Jordan had helped him mow the lawn and water the plants, but for weeks he hadn't seen the old man walk around the neighborhood or even look out into his yard. Until that afternoon, when he saw him leaning out of the garden gate, waving his cane vigorously. Jordan didn't understand what the old man wanted to tell him, but he understood that it was a signal for him to come closer. "Is everything all right, Mr. Fisher? How are you feeling? It's been many weeks since I've seen you in the neighborhood, and I was beginning to worry," Jordan asked politely as he approached the old man across the yard. The old man let out a long, deep sigh that Jordan interpreted as an answer to his questions. "Are you not feeling well? Are you in pain? Can I help you with anything?" the young man asked again when he saw the old man's worried expression. "You could help me with everything, and I would still need help when you were gone. Being old is a torment. You will know that when you get to my age. But the truth is that I asked you to come closer to ask you if you could help me prune these plants," he commented, pointing to some precious bonsais that were on the marble table in the garden. "I have always liked to prune them myself. I could spend hours with the scissors, but the bone pain I have now prevents me from doing it. Could you help me?" he asked. Jordan did not hesitate to offer his help as a gardener to the old man, and accepted the cup of hot tea he offered in payment for his kind services. "Thank you very much for the tea, sir. It is delicious." Jordan thanked him, raising the cup to his lips with one hand, while holding the pruning shears with the other and looking carefully at the plants in front of him. Jordan was there for about 2 hours, and after saying goodbye to the old man, who was already in a much better mood, he raced home before his mother started to wonder where he was. That night, Jordan collapsed into bed and slept soundly. He was exhausted by everything he had done in just one day, and at the same time very happy for having been able to help so many people. It was impossible to imagine what was going to happen a few hours later, and how what started as a selfless gesture of help to a neighbor ended up becoming one of the biggest problems Jordan had ever had to face. It was Thursday, and Jordan was eating breakfast in the kitchen with his 3 younger brothers when he heard the sound of several police cars approaching. The sirens sounded closer and closer, and finally, the cars parked right in front of his house. Jordan could see them through the kitchen window overlooking the street. The boy was petrified in his seat when he saw those policemen in front of the house. He didn't understand what they could need from them. Jordan's younger brother Hassan screamed when he saw the police officers, and the noise alerted his mother, who was still asleep upstairs after working all night. Mrs. Diop came downstairs in a panic to see what was going on, and found 4 police officers standing at the door of her house with a serious look on their faces. Jordan went after her and went ahead to ask the officers what was going on. The boy felt his heart racing, and his top priority was to protect his family. His mother had already had enough misfortunes during that year. He didn't need any more trouble. But the police did not bring good news for Jordan and his family. "Good morning. We are sorry to burst into your home, Mrs. Diop, but a neighbor has reported your son Jordan for stealing a gold watch. The procedure requires us to question your son and search the house," one of the agents explained mechanically, and looked at Jordan with suspicion. Mrs. Diop was outraged to hear the accusation of theft on her son and eldest, and tried to obstruct the police from entering the house, nor from approaching her children. "This is crazy. That neighbor is crazy. My son would never steal from anyone." "A gold watch?" he said. "Why would my son want a gold watch? This is a mistake. I will not allow my family's name and my son's reputation to be soiled in this way." "Jordan is a good boy," shouted Jordan's mother in anger, holding out her arms so that the agents could not get through the door of her house. Jordan hurried to pull his mother aside and begged her to calm down. "Calm down, Mom. Please let the cops do their job and don't complicate things. They're not going to find anything. I have nothing to hide. The sooner they check, the sooner we can settle the matter," he whispered to his mother, trying to calm her down and talk some sense into her. Jordan's mother ended up agreeing to the search and following her older son's advice. The police officers searched the entire house thoroughly, leaving everything in disarray in their wake. They even looked behind the pictures hanging on the walls. But just as Jordan had told them, after more than half an hour of searching, they did not find a single piece of evidence to prove that Jordan had stolen a gold watch or anything similar. "Well, have they found what they were looking for yet?" asked Jordan's mother in a defiant tone when they finished the search and rejoined them at the entrance of the house. The chief of police, Captain Phillips, gave her a disgruntled look. "We have not found the gold watch in the house, but that does not mean that your son has not hidden it elsewhere. To make sure and follow protocol correctly, we will take your son to the police station to take his statement and keep an eye on him while we continue our search for the watch. The law allows us to stay 24 hours without evidence, so I suggest that you do not make a scene again and try to prevent us from taking him away in the police car." "Understood?" said the sergeant with a haughty gesture, and making it very clear that he was not going to change his mind. Jordan felt as if a stone fell into his stomach. "I'm under arrest? But I haven't done anything wrong," exclaimed the young man in disbelief, and with a terrified look on his face. "It's a temporary thing, kid. Don't be alarmed. We're just following protocol. If we don't find anything, tomorrow you'll be home and everything will be back to normal," he said. But things would never go back to the way they were, not after being accused of stealing in a neighborhood as small and respectful as his own. Word of Jordan's arrest would soon spread throughout the community, and shame would fall unfairly upon him and his entire family. Arriving at the police station, Jordan found himself face to face with Mr. Foster, the old man who had reported him, and whom only hours earlier he had helped to prune the plants in his garden. Seeing Jordan in handcuffs, the old man was frightened and regretted having reported him without even asking him directly if he knew what had happened. But it was too late to regret it. "I didn't think the police would go that far, boy. I don't really believe that you were able to steal anything from me. But understand me, there was no one else with me, and the watch disappeared at the same time you did. I did what anyone in my place would have done. I'm so sorry, Jordan. I'm sure they will find the culprit, and everything will calm down," said the old man, very distressed, while he saw how they took the teenager to another room. Jordan did not dare to say anything to him. He felt betrayed and embarrassed by a person he trusted blindly. He simply kept silent and crestfallen, entered the interrogation room, where he spent the entire morning answering all kinds of questions. Meanwhile, the police continued their search for the gold watch. They visited all the possible places where Jordan, in case he really was the thief, could have hidden the object while the police investigated and then went back to look for it. The police were totally committed to the case, and they even searched the teenager's high school locker. But as he kept telling everyone who asked him, they found nothing. The gold watch was nowhere to be found, and the 24-hour deadline for holding Jordan expired, allowing him to go home to rest. But the nightmare had only just begun. As Jordan feared, the rumor that the elderly Mr. Foster had reported him for the alleged theft of his gold watch spread like wildfire, even to his high school teachers who tried to be impartial and support their student, but looked at him with some suspicion. The same thing happened to him at the electronics store where he worked some afternoons, where he was told that for the moment they did not need his help, which actually meant that it was better that customers did not see him in the store while the case was still open. During the following days, wherever he went, Jordan felt the distrustful looks from everyone he had always considered his friends and trusted. The whole situation broke his heart. Fortunately, Jordan still had some loyal friends and loyal people who did not hesitate to defend him against all the rumors that were heard around the neighborhood. Among his defenders were the coach of the high school basketball team where Jordan had been playing since he was a little boy, and the neighbor who lived right next door to Mr. Foster's house, a lovely old lady, Mrs. Violet, whom Jordan had also helped on multiple occasions. "Jordan would never do anything like that. He's the nicest, most honest guy I've known since I've been a high school coach. I don't believe anything people are saying. That kid is not a thief," said his coach. "Jordan is a sweetheart. He always has a kind word for everyone and helps you with anything you need. That old man doesn't know what he's talking about. He shouldn't have called the police and accused the boy rashly. It seems to me that he is starting to lose his mind," admitted the neighbor Violet, very indignant. The days went by, and Mr. Fisher's gold watch was still missing, which began to worry the police, who seemed to be more and more lost, and could not seem to find a way to solve the mystery, and find out where the jewel was, and who had really stolen it. The police officers who searched Jordan's house for clues reconstructed the hours before the watch disappeared with the help of the old man and Jordan himself. But that only led them to the same conclusion as the beginning. Jordan was the only person near the old man and the watch before it disappeared, and there are no witnesses who can confirm or deny the presence of a third person in the house, or who saw Jordan committing the robbery. There was no one else there. The old man claims that the watch was on the hall table in his house, and that just after Jordan went home, the watch had disappeared. "The thief has to be that guy. There's no other option, boss," said one of the policemen, exasperated and tired of going around the same subject without drawing any conclusion that would make them close the case. Jordan was also unable to provide any more information that would help prove his innocence, as he admitted to having been at the old man's house for at least 2 hours, and that during that time they had been completely alone. Jordan's sincerity only worked against him and increased everyone's suspicions about him. The boy went to the bathroom for a moment. I remember he asked me where the wash was, and I pointed it out to him, but I didn't accompany him inside. I stayed in the garden all the time waiting for him. During all that time, he could have taken the watch. "Couldn't he?" commented the old man in his statement, which was beginning to be more and more full of gaps. Jordan also admitted to that part of the story, but refused to accept that during the 5 minutes he was absent, he took the opportunity to steal the watch and hide it away from the old man's gaze. "I repeat that I have not stolen anything. Someone could have broken in and taken it. That house is huge, and that old man has everything open. It was hot, and the windows were open. Anyone could have slipped in while I was in the bathroom," said Jordan, very indignant during the third interrogation the police had subjected him to in less than 2 weeks. "There is no proof of this, just as we have no proof of your innocence. Everything remains the same, although most of the evidence and the testimony of the old man could serve to formally accuse you of the robbery. It would take a miracle for you to get away with the crime," said the police captain, who seemed to enjoy torturing Jordan with the idea of seeing the boy locked up in jail for a robbery he did not commit. Jordan felt disgust for that man, and knew that the racism he felt towards him and all those of his condition would end up condemning him. "He is right. I need a miracle to help me solve this problem." Jordan cursed himself, tossing and turning in his bed, unable to sleep, remembering everything that had happened during the last 2 weeks. But sometimes miracles happen, and people's luck changes from one moment to the next. While Jordan was in math class trying to listen to his teacher, one of his classmates, Theo, who was absent from school that day, went to the police station to show the definitive proof that would end the mystery of the gold watch theft and prove Jordan's innocence. Apparently, the boy could no longer bear the pangs of conscience and decided to expose the real thief of the robbery and the architect of everyone's belief that Jordan was the culprit. Theo showed the police a video recording he had made himself without anyone noticing, in which another young man was taunting Jordan and bragging about stealing the old man's watch without either of them noticing anything. That other boy was Sullivan Creek, the son of one of the most influential men in the entire town, and up to that point, one of the highest-rated students in the high school. Sullivan went to the same class as Jordan and Theo. They had known each other since kindergarten. However, they never really considered each other friends. They were too different and had different interests. Unfortunately, it was precisely these differences and young Creek's racist mentality that led him to commit the robbery to frame Jordan and cause his popularity in the community to plummet. Apparently, he was jealous of him and could not stand the fact that a color person had earned the respect of everyone and could become as successful as he was. "Why did you do it? Because I'm a black kid? My family deserves the same respect as yours, Sully. And now you will know what it means to be humiliated by those you love the most," was the only thing Jordan asked Sullivan when he saw him detained at the police station where he had also been held a few days earlier. Sullivan broke down in tears and confessed in embarrassment that he didn't want things to get complicated the way they did. "It was a joke, but now I understand that I have acted badly, and that my actions must have consequences. I'm so sorry, Jordan." He apologized. News of Sullivan Creek's arrest as the true perpetrator of the theft of the old man's watch spread throughout the neighborhood within hours, causing shock and outrage throughout the community. Many wanted to come to the Diop home to apologize and show their support for Jordan. Mr. Foster was the first to come to Jordan to apologize and assure him that he never believed he was a thief and that he had acted wrongly. The police quickly closed the case and decided to be lenient with Sullivan, who was only sentenced to 2 weeks of community service and a minor reprimand that would not tarnish his academic record. However, the shame and guilt Sullivan felt would never leave him alone, and he would forever have to live with the consequences of his actions.